What would you do if the child you sacrificed everything for told you that you were an embarrassment, that you weren't welcome in the home you paid for? Most people would beg or cry. I smiled, and then I made one phone call that would unravel their perfect, privileged lives. This is the story of how I went from being a forgotten father to the architect of their downfall. Before we get into the story that changed my life forever, do me a favor. If you've ever been underestimated, ever been made to feel like you weren't good enough by people who owed you everything, hit that like button. Let's get this video to everyone who needs to hear that it's never too late to take your power back. And subscribe, because what I did next, you're not going to want to miss it. The leather of my son's designer sofa sighed under me as I leaned back, the scent of their absurdly expensive fig-scented candle clogging the air. "I could make my famous prime rib this year," I said, the words feeling warm and familiar in my mouth. "The one with the coffee rub. Sarah, your mother, she always said it was the best thing she'd ever tasted." The memory hung between us, a ghost at their perfectly curated holiday party. My son, Ben, shifted beside me. The light from their 10-foot Christmas tree caught the platinum of his wedding band, a band I'd paid for. His shoulders tightened, pulling inward like a turtle retreating into a shell he hadn't built. "Dad," he started, his voice thin. "About Christmas this year, you won't be able to come." The air left my lungs. It wasn't a punch, it was a vacuum. The cheerful clatter of his wife Chloe arranging canapes in the kitchen suddenly sounded like gunfire. "What do you mean I won't be able to come?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm.
He couldn't look at me. His gaze was fixed on their polished concrete coffee table, a table I'd financed when Chloe decided their old one clashed with the aesthetic. "Chloe's parents are flying in from Connecticut. They'd prefer a more intimate gathering. They'd prefer." The words were icicles down my spine. "Their preference trumps your father's place at the table?" I asked, my eyes scanning the room. The floor-to-ceiling windows I'd helped install when their architect's quote gave them sticker shock. The Italian light fixture that had maxed out 3 of my credit cards. This wasn't a house. It was a museum of my financial bleeding, every exhibit a testament to my love for a son who now saw me as a stain on his new life. "It's just easier this way, Dad," he whispered, shrinking before my eyes. "You know how they are. They have a certain way of doing things."
"And what way is that, Ben?" My voice was low, a rumble before an avalanche. He flinched. "Dad, please, don't make this harder." Through the archway, I saw it. Chloe's brand new, professional-grade espresso machine, a gleaming chrome monolith, $3,500. A machine for coffee she didn't even drink, bought with money that was supposed to be for fixing the roof on my own house, the house where I'd raised him alone after cancer took Sarah. "Where am I supposed to go, Ben?" The question came out hollow, a shell of sound. "Maybe, Aunt Linda's? Or we could do a big dinner the weekend after." The weekend after, as if Christmas was a dentist appointment that could be rescheduled. I stood up, my knees cracking, a sound that echoed the breaking happening deep inside my chest. 8 years of working construction through the pain, of eating canned soup for dinner so he could have everything, of silence, all culminating in this moment. "I see," I said, my voice flat. "Dad, wait!" But I was already moving. Past the gallery wall of photos where my face got smaller and smaller in each frame, replaced with shots of Chloe's family on sailboats and in ski lodges. past the closet full of her designer coats. My hand found the solid brass doorknob, cold and final.
I turned one last time. "Son, tell your in-laws something for me." I met his guilty, shamed eyes. "Tell them Merry Christmas." The winter air outside was a physical slap, clean and honest. Behind me, I heard the soft, definitive click of the door closing. I sat in my old Ford F-150, the engine off, watching the colored lights dance in windows all over their exclusive Seattle neighborhood. Windows to homes I'd never be welcome in. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Ben, no doubt, already trying to paper over this chasm with weak apologies and empty promises. I let it ring. Instead, I turned the key and drove away from the gilded cage I'd built for him, leaving its false warmth behind. The heater whined against the cold. I drove past the park where I taught him to ride a bike, past the community college where I'd taken night classes and construction management to build a better life for us. The ghost of the man I used to be, a man who believed family was everything, haunted every street corner. That man was a fool. A red light on Denny Way. I watched a young father buckle his laughing daughter into a car seat, a Christmas tree strapped to his roof. That was us once, before Chloe, before I became nothing more than a utility, a walking, talking bank account with inconvenient emotions. The numbers started scrolling through my head then, not like a slot machine, but like a forensic audit, a brutal, unsparing calculation of my own stupidity. $3,200 every month for 4 years. The down payment on this very house, $55,000, my entire inheritance from my father. The kitchen renovation, $22,000, my vacation fund for a decade. The new roof after last year's storm, $15,000. My retirement security.
I pulled into my own driveway, the cracked pavement a mocking contrast to their perfect stamped concrete. My porch light was out, a bulb I hadn't bothered to replace because every spare dime had a destination that wasn't here. Inside, the house was silent. It always was, but tonight the silence had a new quality. It wasn't empty. It was waiting. My phone rang again. This time, Chloe's name flashed on the screen. Perfect. I answered on the 4th ring. "Robert?" Her voice was a syrupy poison, the same tone she used when asking me to cover their property taxes. "Ben told me about your little chat. I'm sure you're emotional, but we need to be practical." "I'm listening," I said, my voice a flat line. "It's about my parents. They're particular. They appreciate a certain refinement. Your cooking, Robert, all those heavy, greasy comfort foods, and the way you tell those loud stories about your work crew, it's just not the ambiance they're used to. They're Ivy League people. They discuss wine vintages and macroeconomic policy. What would you even talk about?" The silence on my end was absolute. I could hear the champagne cork of her audacity pop down the line. "I mean, my mother is on the board of the Met. My father plays golf with senators. You fix sinks. It's a different world." I finally spoke, my voice so quiet she had to strain to hear it. "You mean the world I paid for, Chloe? The world I funded while you looked down your nose at the very hands that built it for you?" The false sweetness evaporated. "Don't be dramatic. This isn't personal. It's about class, breeding. My parents have it. You don't. It's that simple. Sarah at least knew how to stay in her lane." The line went dead silent. She'd invoked my dead wife. She'd drawn a line in the sand and then tap-danced right over it.
"What did you just say about Sarah?" The words were gravel and glass.
I'm just saying she knew her place. She didn't try to force her way into conversations she couldn't understand. She had a quiet dignity about her. My hand tightened around the phone. Sarah had been a librarian. She'd read more books than Chloe's entire bloodline put together. She had more class, more true grace while cleaning paint off my coveralls than Chloe would ever possess in her lifetime. "Chloe," I said, my voice dropping into a register I didn't recognize. "Listen to me very carefully. We are done. This arrangement is over." I ended the call. The silence that followed was the most profound sound I'd ever heard. It was the sound of a chain breaking. I went to the battered filing cabinet in my study and pulled out the thick, overflowing manila folder I'd been avoiding for years. Bank statements, loan agreements, receipts, 4 years of my life quantified in black and white. I spread them across my kitchen table, the table where I'd helped Ben with his homework, where Sarah and I had shared 1,000 meals, and I started adding. The numbers were a brutal autopsy of my love. $153,600 in mortgage payments alone, over $250,000 all in. My future, my security, my comfort, all poured into a black hole of ingratitude. I reached for my phone, scrolled past Ben's name, past Chloe's. I found the number for my bank. "I need to cancel an automatic transfer," I said to the cheerful woman who answered. My voice was iron, steady, final. "Certainly, sir. Which one?" "The monthly transfer to Wells Fargo, account ending 8891, $3,200. "And how long have you been making this transfer, Mr. Henderson?" 4 years. The words were ash in my mouth. "And you'd like to cancel this effective immediately?" I looked around my kitchen, at the linoleum floor curling at the edges, at the stove with 2 broken burners, at the window sealed with duct tape against the draft. I saw every sacrifice I'd made for a son who just told me I wasn't good enough for Christmas dinner. "Effective immediately," I confirmed. "Done." I hung up. The word echoed in the silent house. Done. I gathered the papers, the evidence of my martyrdom, carried them to the fireplace, and struck a match. I watched 4 years of my life curl into black ash, feeling the heat on my face. It was the warmest I'd felt in years. My phone buzzed. A text from Ben. "Dad, can we talk about this?" I didn't answer. Instead, I poured 2 fingers of cheap whiskey, raised the glass to Sarah's photo on the mantel, and drank to my freedom. The next morning, my phone rang at exactly 10:15 a.m. Chloe. "Robert, my parents' flight from JFK gets in at 1:30, Alaska Air. I need you to pick them up. Their luggage is heavy, so bring the truck." The audacity was a physical thing. It stole the air from the room. "Chloe," I said, my voice calm, "did yesterday not happen?" "We can deal with your tantrum later," she snapped, her impatience shredding the last veneer of civility. "Right now, I need a practical solution. You're the only one available. Just be at baggage claim, carousel 4. And for God's sake, wear something without paint stains. My father notices that sort of thing." She hung up without a thank you. 1:30 p.m., carousel 4. I glanced at the clock, 10:20. Plenty of time. I poured another coffee, added a generous shot of the cheap whiskey, and opened the newspaper to the crossword. 7 across. The pleasure of patience. 9 letters. I smiled. The answer, I knew, was vengeance. At 1:25 p.m., I was not at the airport. I was in my favorite armchair, a fresh cup of coffee in hand, listening to the rain patter against my newly repaired roof. The sound was a symphony. My phone started buzzing. Chloe. Then a number I didn't recognize, probably her parents. I let them ring. The buzzing became a persistent, angry insect. I pictured them standing at the crowded baggage claim, their designer luggage at their feet, their faces growing tight with irritation as they realized their peasant had failed them. By 2:45 p.m., my phone had buzzed 11 times. I'd fixed the leaky faucet in my bathroom, a small victory that felt monumental. At 3:15, the pounding started on my front door. Not a knock, a violent, furious hammering that shook the frame. I opened the door to find 3 people huddled on my porch, soaked from the rain, their faces masks of pure, undiluted rage. Charles Van Horn, Chloe's father, stood red-faced and sputtering. His wife, Eleanor, looked at my humble home like it was a biohazard. Chloe stood behind them, her designer coat plastered to her, her expression a thundercloud. "What in the absolute hell is wrong with you?" Charles roared, pushing past me into my living room without an invitation. "We waited for an hour! An hour! We had to take a filthy cab." "This is unconscionable behavior, Robert. Absolutely savage." "You humiliated us. Do you have any idea what you've done?" I let their tirade wash over me, saying nothing. When they finally paused for air, my voice cut through the noise, quiet and sharp. "Get out of my house." They froze, stunned into silence. "Excuse me?" Charles spluttered, his face purpling. "You heard me. You are not welcome here. Get out." Eleanor drew herself up, a queen addressing a serf. "Robert, you clearly don't understand who you're dealing with. My husband has considerable influence in this city. You can't treat people like us this way and expect to just—" "This was a lesson," I interrupted, my gaze locking with hers. "A lesson in what happens when you treat the person funding your life like a servant. The lesson is over. You can leave." Charles jabbed a finger at my chest. "You have no idea what you've started, you ignorant old man. I will ruin you. I will make sure you regret this for the rest of your pathetic life." "Is that a threat, Charles?" "It's a promise." I held the door open wider. They filed out, a defeated parade of arrogance, but Charles turned at the threshold, his eyes blazing. "This isn't over." I closed the door and turned the deadbolt. The click was the most satisfying sound I'd ever heard. 3 days later, I found it. A short article in the business section of the local paper. "Local contractor strands elderly couple at airport." There was my company photo, next to a quote from Charles Van Horn, retired investment banker, about how they'd been left in the freezing rain by a man with a history of erratic behavior. It was a masterpiece of manipulation. No context, just me, the villain. They'd declared war in a public forum. Big mistake. I spent the next 72 hours in my study. My laptop glowed like a forge. Charles Van Horn, board member, country club, donor to the symphony. A man with a reputation polished to a high shine. Eleanor Van Horn, Instagram full of charity galas and blessed vacation photos in Tuscany. Chloe, Facebook posts boasting about their beautiful home, their successful life, a curated lie paid for with my sweat. And then I found it, the key. A save the date for their annual New Year's Eve black tie gala, the social event of their season, hosted at their house, my house. Dozens of the city's elite would be there. I knew what I had to do. New Year's Eve, I stood across the street from the house that had consumed my life. It blazed with light. Laughter and the tinkling of glasses spilled out into the cold night. Men in tuxedos and women in glittering gowns flowed through the open door. I waited. I watched. I checked my watch. 9:45 p.m. Right after dinner would be served. Right when everyone would be comfortable, smug, and full of champagne. I walked across the street, not in a tuxedo, but in my best pair of clean jeans and a work shirt, the uniform they had always looked down on. I carried a simple cardboard box. The door was unlocked. Of course it was. I stepped inside. The crowd was a swirl of perfume and self-congratulation. I saw Charles holding court by the fireplace I paid for. Eleanor preening over the gourmet cheese table I'd financed. I walked calmly to the center of their living room, set the box down on their precious concrete coffee table, and stepped up onto their sleek, modern sofa. The conversations died. Dozens of faces turned toward me, expressions frozen in confusion and horror. "Good evening," I said, my voice calm and clear, cutting through the jazz music. "For those who don't know me, I'm Robert Henderson, Ben's father, and I'd like to take a moment to thank our hosts for this lovely party." Chloe's face was a mask of terror. Ben looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. "I've brought a party favor for everyone. A little story, the true story of this beautiful home." I began handing out thick packets of paper to the nearest guests. "In there, you'll find 4 years of bank statements. You'll see the $3,200 I sent every month to pay this mortgage, the $55,000 down payment, the $22,000 for this kitchen, the $15,000 for the roof over your heads." The silence was absolute. You could hear a diamond drop. "You'll also find a copy of a recent newspaper article where Charles and Eleanor, the lovely people you see before you, portrayed me as a mentally unstable monster for refusing to be their chauffeur. What the article fails to
Mention is that they did this after barring me from Christmas dinner for not being refined enough to sit at their table. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A woman in a sequined dress dropped her pocket like it was on fire. "He's lying!" Charles blustered, his face mottled with rage. "The man is clearly unwell, grieving. He's—" "What's the matter, Charles?" I asked, my voice still quiet, but now dripping with a venom I didn't know I possessed. "Does the truth not match the ambiance? Does it clash with the aesthetic?" I looked out at the sea of shocked, embarrassed faces, their friends, their colleagues, their entire social world. "I just wanted you all to know," I said, stepping down from the couch, "exactly who you're celebrating with tonight. People who build their paradise on the back of a man they consider trash and then try to destroy him when he stops paying the bills. Enjoy the rest of your party. The champagne is on me." I walked out the door. I didn't look back, but the sound that followed me out into the clean, cold night wasn't music or laughter. It was the beautiful, catastrophic sound of reputations shattering into a million pieces. The letter came in February. Certified mail. Notice of default. 3 missed payments. $9,600. They had 2 weeks to pay, or the bank would begin foreclosure. Ben showed up at my door a week later. The confident, polished man was gone. In his place was a hollowed-out boy, his eyes shadowed with a fear I knew too well. "Dad," he said, his voice cracking, We're going to lose everything." "I know," I said, not unkindly.
I didn't know about the article, Dad. I swear. When I found out what they said about Mom, he broke down then, sobbing in my doorway. "I'm so sorry. I was weak. I was so afraid of losing them. I didn't realize I'd already lost you." I watched him, this son of mine. The weight of his choices was finally crushing him, and for the first time, I felt not anger, but a profound, weary pity. "I forgive you, Ben," I said, and I meant it. But forgiveness doesn't mean a blank check. It doesn't mean I'm going back. You want a relationship with me? You have to build a new one, on respect, not on my money. He looked up, tears streaking his face. "The house is your problem. You're a grown man. Sell it. Downsize. Get jobs that pay for the life you want to live. Stop leaning on other people to hold you up." He left that night, not fixed, but perhaps for the first time, awake. Spring came to Seattle. I fixed my porch light. I bought a new stove. The silence in my house is no longer empty. It's peaceful. It's mine. What did I learn? That love shouldn't come with conditions, that sacrifice means nothing without respect, and that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't to fight back with fists or fury, but with the cold, hard, undeniable truth. I didn't destroy my son. I gave him a mirror, and for the first time in years, he finally had to look at himself. If this story resonated with you, if you felt that burn of injustice and that chill of satisfaction, do me a favor. Hit that like button and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Let's get this message out there. And subscribe for more stories about what happens when ordinary people decide they've had enough. Let me know in the comments, what's the most satisfying revenge you've ever witnessed?